Gager talking to you from the Colorado Trail. Just finishing up today's hike when it dawned on me that I haven't shared with you kind of a foundational principle that the other videos that I've shot is based on. So even though I've shot 3 other videos, this video is the first one you should watch in the series. And basically, the principle that I'm talking about, many of you are aware of, but some of you may not be, and I just want to share it with you to make so that the other videos make a little more sense. Think about each day when you wake up and the alarm goes off. From the time you get out of bed till the time you go back to bed and lay your head back down on the pillow, what percent of that time do you spend consciously considering and thinking about what you're doing, how you're feeling, and what you're thinking? If you're like most of us, that's probably less than 10% of the time. And so that other 90 to 95% of the time, we tend to get through our day on a sort of autopilot. And there's a psychologist out of New York University that came up with a great analogy that helps us to understand the relationship between the way our subconscious mind works and our conscious mind. And he refers to the subconscious mind as the 12,000-pound elephant, and the conscious mind is the 200-pound rider. And so the way most of us work is from the time we wake up in the morning till the time we go to bed at night, we're operating on an sort of autopilot that's controlled by that subconscious elephant. And a great way to look at this and understand it is to think about the first time you learned to drive a car. Now, I don't know about you, but when I learned to drive in a 1967 Chevy Bel Air. And if you know anything about American cars, especially from the 60s, they were big, heavy cars. There was no plastic, no composites. They were made out of metal. And so this Bel Air was probably the size of an aircraft carrier. And my dad, it was his car. My dad was an interesting guy. As generous as he was with everybody else, he was not with himself. And in 1967, when he bought that car new, things like power steering and power brakes, those were options. And my dad, in buying the car, said, you know what, I don't need that stuff. So here I am, a 16-year-old kid, learning to drive this aircraft carrier with no power steering and no power brakes. So from the first time I sat in that car to drive it, it took all of my conscious attention. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen one of those old pirate movies where they're in a storm and the guy's trying to steer the ship and he's got that big wheel and he's on the side of the wheel hauling it over. That's what it was like trying to drive this Bel Air. You know, I felt like I had to slide into the middle of the bench seat and use my body weight to make a turn. And sometimes I found myself having to use both feet on the brakes to be able to stop. And so it took all my conscious attention for about 3 weeks. And then by that time, my elephant, my subconscious mind, had learned all the computer programs, the patterns, the habits necessary to drive a car. So after about 3 or 4 weeks, I could hop in that Bel Air, not give it a second thought, pop my Jethro Tull 8-track into the 8-track player and head off down the road, not giving it a second thought. That's the way we kind of develop in life, is our subconscious elephant learns almost like computer programs how to drive a car, how to be in a social situation, how to navigate with your boss, and they become habitual. And once they become habitual, the conscious mind doesn't need to pay attention. The elephant controls everything. Now, in so many ways, this is really good because it frees our conscious mind up to focus on other things, be creative and do all that other stuff. But in some ways, operating off the elephant's programs can hurt us, because what we tend to do, and the way the elephant tends to operate, is it tends to fall into the habits. And it will stick with these habits even when we know those habits are not in our best interest. There was a study done of cardiac patients who were told by their cardiologist that if they didn't change their patterns, their habits, they would die. And they found that over 70% of those patients made 0 changes. That's how powerful the elephant will hold on to these habits. And so what happens is we typically go through our day the way we've always gone through our day. And you know the old saying, doing what you've done will get you what you got? Well, if we want to make changes to our lives, we've got to be able to make changes to these habits. And so this video series that I'm sharing with you are just kind of random thoughts that pop up in my mind when I'm hiking that kind of have to do with my story and my experience and the experience of the folks that I've worked with over the last 20 plus years in how we can kind of break through that elephant and make meaningful changes in our lives. So I just wanted to lay that down as kind of a foundational piece that, you know, so if you hear me in future videos talk about the rider and the elephant, I'm talking about the rider as the conscious mind, the elephant is the habitual subconscious mind. So hopefully that helps put things in perspective. You know, feel free, my email address is right at the bottom in the links. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. But just wanted to lay that foundation, and thanks for tuning in. Have a great day, and I hope you tune into some of my other videos. Talk to you soon. Take care.